I'm Peggy Scot Laborde, and welcome to Steppin Out, spotlighting the New Orleans area's arts and entertainment scene. Seated at our table tonight, Tulane University professor, geographer, and author, Richard Campanella. The list is long as to how to describe Richard. And Poppy Tooker, host of the radio program Louisiana Eats, airing twice weekly on WWNO Radio. Hello, Miss Poppy.
Hi, Peggy.
Making a Steppin Out debut, even though we've talked about him enough, Jonathan Merez, co-producing this time a showing of the actor Val Kilmer's film in which he portrays Mark Twain. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
He's always doing lots of local theater stuff, especially with Anais St. John, who
all
we
the time,
love.
yes.
And Steppin Out theater critic Alan Smason. And he has that theatercriticism.com that you have to check out. But first up, Poppy.
First up, a road trip. I've got a great day trip for people to take, and that is to go to Baton Rouge and visit the Louisiana Arts and Science Museum, which is in that old train depot right on the river. And there's an exhibit that's opened up there this week called A Feast for the Eyes, the story of food in photography. It's there from now through September 16th. It is a fascinating exhibit. They have early food photographs from the mid-1800s where they were trying, obviously, to mimic still life portraiture and artistry in photographs. They have historical cookbooks scattered throughout the display. One of them that really fascinated me were post-World War II, basically propaganda. Germany and Russia the state publishing these books with these delicious photographs of things that those people weren't going to eat for another decade or more. Really interesting. And there's so much more up there. All over the museum, there's hands-on experiences for adults and children, so you can try your hand at still life drawing yourself. Plus, because it is also a science museum, they carried the food theme through, and you can learn all about food in space and how and what the astronauts eat. It's really terrific. So if you can't make the road trip to Baton Rouge, stay tuned for a virtual tour in July on Louisiana Eats with curators Denise Wolfe from the Aperture Foundation in New York City, which put this together, and Elizabeth Weinstein in Baton Rouge. And when it leaves Baton Rouge, it's going to Amsterdam. So for goodness sake, just go to Baton Rouge.
You gave a talk there. That must have been fun.
Last night, it was really great. The auditorium was full, and it was so much fun to see all my Louisiana Eats Baton Rouge friends. And then a little something sweet tomorrow. For your sweet tooth, I suggest you head to the Southern Food and Beverage Museum for the Big Top Cake competition. The theme this year is a celebration of time. Now, it's from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m., and they're celebrating the New Orleans Tricentennial and SoFab's 10th anniversary with all these great cakes. There's going to be professional judging and People's Choice Awards, so there's lots of cake to sample. There's demos and panels, and there'll be the Bakery Carnival, which will showcase local bakeries with sweet and savory choux pastries to eat. I think this sounds like a really fun, delicious time. But if pastry maybe isn't your thing, wait till next Friday night if beer is your thing. And go to the Deutsches House for the beer choir. This is next Friday night. This sounds like crazy fun on Ridgeway Drive in Metairie. Doors open at 6, performance from 7 till 8, half-price drinks between 6 and 7. You get to sing along from the beer hymnal. I mean, I couldn't make that up. I don't know what it is.
Members of the New Orleans Symphony Chorus?
Yes, exactly. So the singing's going to be great. And then another little staycation idea. There is the most wonderful place called Piccola Gelateria. It's on Ferret Street. It's almost next door to Bar Francis. And Ross and Rhea Turnbull invite everyone to come into their living room. This is like the living room if your living room is in Milan. I have a little secret. His gelato, if you are eating gelato at Domenica, Sabra, the Italian Barrel. Basically, every fine Italian restaurant in the city is getting their gelato from Ross Turnbull. They have traditional gelato flavors like Amarena cherry, chocolate, hazelnut, and pistachio. They have sea salt caramel sometimes licorice, rose petal, toffee. They also serve crepes and piadinas. Now, I didn't even know what a piadina is, but it's a thin Italian flatbread that comes from the Romagna region in Italy, and they have these flown in weekly. They're made there. No one else in New Orleans serves these, and it's like this sort of crunchy crepe, yummy thing, roasted turkey, chicken, prosciutto, BLT, vegetarian, and for goodness sake, don't forget the affogato. You can get the affogato there, you know, which is the gelato and the espresso, one of my favorite things.
I love hearing you just say that.
I like to say it, I like to drink it, I like to eat it. They're open noon until 9, except weekends, open till 10, closed on Mondays. And if you want to have a glass of wine with your crepe or piadina, you can go grab it next door at Bar Francis and bring it in. They don't care.
A quick P.S., 2 things. I had never had a frozen green tea from Pacino's. I had this sense memory, and it tastes like Orange Julius.
Really?
Really.
So, well, I gotta have
crazy.
one.
You gotta check that out. Plus, Revel, as you probably know, and I know you'll be visiting them again, visiting them soon on this. Chris DeBar, Green Goddess, is at the helm in terms of a chef.
Today,
great crab meat salad with watermelon slices too.
Well, he also sweet talked his friend from what's the wine bar on St. Charles Avenue? Remember that Chris started out at?
Yeah, Delicious.
Thank you. He sweet talked the chef who was his cohort there into joining him at Revel. So the dynamic duo is back. There's plenty to go see at Revel.
Good looking menu, so I look forward to hearing your thoughts about that. Anyway, speaking of thoughts, Richard, you are so prolific, and thank God you are. Okay, between the Times-Picayune, once a month, I think
once
it
a
is.
month.
Once a month.
It's called Cityscapes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, and then also in the Preservation Resource Center, Preservation and Print. But you have amassed quite a few essays, which are now in Cityscapes, your latest. But where else can you learn about the history of the Go Cup, Bourbon Street, what New Orleans was like to go out in the 1930s, and Monkey Hill, plus many more? This had to be fun to put together.
Yeah, and it's over the past 5 years, I've gained these periodical obligations of monthly Cityscapes, Preservation and Print, and also Louisiana Cultural Vistas, where I have a column called Geographer Space, in addition to my kind of larger kind of scholarly stuff. And so it's allowed me to cast a wider net to a large number of smaller projects that are not full-length books, but have always been of interest to me. And what yokes them together, what holds the volume together, it's all about spatial explanation. It's explaining how our map came together. And some of those are infrastructure, some of it's architecture, some of it's neighborhood formation, some of it is some of the quirks of our geography, such as Monkey Hill. But it is essentially still a geography of the city. So it's about 80 different self-standing analytical essays. It could be read in any order.
You can breeze through it.
It's
just, but it's really so good. And of course, a few years back, you did the book on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, kind of a full-blown history of Bourbon Street, which was really a life-altering sort of research project for me. Well, it just opened my eyes to withholding judgment on on places that are always judged, and viewing them as cultural artifacts that are very informative.
And of course, you know, when you say Bourbon Street, you're talking about the entertainment and entertainers, especially in the heyday. But it's so much more than that.
It's the whole 300-year
House?
history, and the question I sought to answer is, where did this phenomena come from, and why there? Well, why not some other street? Why not some other city?
Yeah, and then one of your latest things is doing the introduction to this beautiful new book, Gateway to New Orleans, Bayou St. John.
Right. This is a publication from Louisiana Landmark Society. There's a number of different authors, and I got a call in early November from Mary Lou Kristovich asking me to write the prologue. And we all know the late, great Mary Lou Kristovich passed away on Christmas Day, and I understand it, worked on this book in the morning of the days that she died.
Well, it's
so this came out about a week ago. There's 7 or 8 different authors who have all contributed, and it's in the spirit and style of the Friends of the Cabildo New Orleans Architecture series, which are both architectures, their histories, their geographies, and they're very photographic
as well. And the photographs,
as well.
lots of great photographs with Robert and Jan Brantley.
Right.
But we'll be talking more about this in the future, but just to kind of give that idea too. So what's your next project?
Well, I'm keeping busy with my monthly writing assignments, but I've also started just about a year ago a full-blown historical geography of the West Bank.
Lots there.
Yes,
That's
and
for
I'm
sure.
learning a lot and unlearning a lot.
Well, we're glad you're here, Richard. Thank you. And New Orleans Magazine's quiz queen, Julia Street, has a question for us. Last time, Jane Bourgeois gave us the names of 2 streets that are named after Spanish governors who occupied the Louisiana Territory between 1766 and 1803. You could have said Galvez, Carondelet, Yaloa, Gayoso, or Salcedo. Notice that I'm saying street names, right? Yeah, there's something to that, right? And now tonight's question. This sacred Voodoo Day is celebrated on June 23rd. What is the day known as, and along what body of water was there an annual celebration, and actually maybe is one these days too? Email your answers to steppinout@wyes.org. Our prize is a year subscription to Louisiana Life magazine. An apron with the message, "Life is better with feta," from our friends at wearablevegetables.com. And a pair of free admission passes to either the Audubon Zoo, Aquarium of the Americas, or the Butterfly Garden and Insectarium. You can go to WYES.org for our online calendar to see our lineup of events, including the best of bycatch cooking. Explain what bycatch cooking
Well,
is.
all I can tell you is it's all about Asian carp, this event.
Okay. And
Asian carp.
All right. Southern Food and Beverage, that's next Tuesday. You can also link to our WYS YouTube channel to see our program. And now, Jonathan, as we had mentioned at the top here, Jonathan, you have produced a lot of plays locally, but this time's a little different, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is. I've been in touch with Val Kilmer's representatives since October, trying to get this event here to New Orleans. As some people may or may not know, Val has been here many times. He was King of Bacchus in 2009, and he recounts a lot how there's just nothing like. He can always go back to that day, picturing himself throwing doubloons out with his picture on them for miles and miles, and he laughs about it when he thinks about it to this day. And then he filmed Deja Vu here in this city with Denzel Washington and Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans with Nicolas Cage. So he loves New Orleans, and he talks about Port of Call all the time and their burgers. That's like the restaurant that he will bring up when he talks about New Orleans. So it was kind of a match made in heaven. He wanted to come back to New Orleans. We wanted to get him here for an event, and it worked out.
So he's been doing, or he did a few years back, a one-man show of Mark Twain, a la Mark Twain Tonight, with the wonderful Hal Holbrook.
Right.
And in hopes, you said, of perhaps maybe showing that and doing a film down the road about Mark Twain.
Exactly.
And so in effect, this was a recording of the performance, and that's what you'll be showing at the Joy next week.
Exactly. His intention was he was going to make a movie about Mark Twain. And he thought the best way to approach that in order to get investors interested in it, as well as for him to perfect Mark Twain, was to do a stage show. So he decided on a one-man show. He directed it, he is in it, he wrote it, he produced it, he basically did everything for it. And he would tour it throughout California, and he would perform it every week, and just to hone Mark Twain. He wanted to get it as perfect as possible.
So you're doing this at the Joy.
We're doing this at the Joy. This is a filmed version of one of those performances. And it's about 90 minutes long. He's going to introduce the movie himself.
So he'll be there.
Oh, he will be at the Joy.
And folks can see him.
Folks can see him. He's going to do a Q&A after.
This is great.
Anybody that wants to be there, that wants to do a talk back with him, can ask him anything. He likes to say, try to keep it Mark Twain related. That never happens in these talkbacks. Top Gun's brought up a lot. Tombstone, The Doors, Batman Forever.
Yes.
But he always has a great time with the
Batman.
people. He was. He really was. He was fantastic.
Yeah. Now, he had some health problems recently, but he's doing better.
He did. He's doing much better. He's improving every day, and I talked to his manager the other day, and he's so excited to come down here. He can't wait.
So now, let us show you, though, an excerpt from Cinema Twain starring Val Kilmer.
They say living in California adds 10 years to your life. Isn't that wonderful? I think I'll spend them in New York. Oh, yes, that's a good one. Give it to me. Give it to me. Oh, I love the compliments. I love the compliments. I was born modest, but it wore off. That's a lovely feeling. That's just like angels licking me. I love the compliments. Although I'm also embarrassed to say what I think to a person when I get a compliment. Aren't you sometimes embarrassed when you get a compliment? Yes, I so often feel they have not gone far enough.
And a reminder that you can see Cinema Twain and Val Kilmer. That's next Saturday night at the Joy Theater on Canal Street. Visit the Joy's website to purchase tickets. And before we move on, though, Jonathan, I know you've done a lot of work with Anais St. John, and she's working on something real special. Huh?
Oh, she is. It's going to be in August. It's a co-production with JPAS at their Teatro Wego venue out in West Wego. It's called Lulu White, Queen of Storyville. Oh. And it's about Lulu White, Mahogany Hall, and it's going to incorporate a lot of songs from that era, as well as some more modern songs, but set rearranged to jazz stylings.
And
so
she's
it's going to be very
writing it,
interesting.
isn't she?
She is co-writing it, and Harry Marone is doing the musical
man.
direction. So it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
And yeah, so I mean, I love the fact that Anais doesn't just sing, which is plenty enough, by the way, right there.
Oh,
but she does all these other things.
She does.
She teaches at
She teaches at Trinity, and she keeps busy. She has a weekly engagement at the Little Gem Saloon now, which she loves. So she's wonderful.
Yeah, we wish her well. Look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing her. Thank you. And it's time for our Artist Spotlight. We are featuring the art of Robert Diber, and we have the painting Another Cock and Bull Story. Born in Connecticut, Diber's work has been described as visual interpretations of cliches, euphemisms, and idioms. And this one is called Fox News. And here's also Fruit Flies. There'll be an opening reception tomorrow night at the Martin Lawrence Gallery on Royal Street. The show runs until July 10th. Visit the gallery's website for more info. And now, the one and only Alan.
Yes, and last night I attended the opening, the initial offering, if you will, from Summer Lyric at Tulane's production of Lerner and Lowe's My Fair Lady. Coincidentally, it's being held the same weekend as the Gold Cup at Ascot, believe it or not. But let's not mince words, though. This My Fair Lady is about the best I've ever seen. It's directed by Michael McKelvey, and it stars a newcomer, Jackie Vanderbeck, who erases all doubts as to her abilities in the very first song she sings, Wouldn't It Be Loverly? In addition to a loverly voice, she has the bold and brassy moves needed to keep up with Professor Henry Higgins, played by Christopher Carey, the dashing leading man of so many previous Summer Lyric productions. While he did have a little bit of stumbling of sort of his lines on opening night, though, he always corrected, and his singing was considerably better than the originator of that role, Rex Harrison, from 1956 on Broadway, and the movie, of course, in 1965. The tension between the irrepressible Eliza and the intransigent Professor Higgins can be cut with a knife. In her quest to be a better person and have a better station in life, Eliza finds that she frees herself from the chains of poverty only to be circumscribed by society's expectations of her. Now, stealing the show was the remarkable Bob Eads Jr. as Alfred Doolittle, Eliza's father, whose philosophy of life is best summed up with a little bit of luck. It's also a great opportunity to get off some of Diane Lala's fantastic, brilliant choreography in that particular rousing song, as well as in the second act's Get Me to the Church on Time. A shout out to Sean Patterson as Colonel Pickering for his superb work, and also in support, Keith Clavery as the second act feature role of Zoltan Karpathy, the KG phoneticist who wants to investigate Eliza further. Although he is only featured on the Street That You Live, John Michael Haas once again thrills us with his brilliant, beautiful golden tenor voice and his charming stage presence. And in the George Bernard Shaw play, Pygmalion, and the motion picture by Gabriel Pascal, upon which My Fair Lady is based, Freddie Einsford Hill really does capture Eliza's heart. This is probably my favorite Lerner and Lowe musical for many reasons. You might know there is a new production of it right now on Broadway at Lincoln Center, and received several Tony nominations for Lauren Ambrose and Norbert Leo Butz. But for those of you wanting to stay a little closer to home, I can guarantee that this is a very truthful version of the original cast from Broadway and London, and is a very fantastic production with great conducting by C. Leonard Raybon, and really his musical ensemble is top-notch, many of them from the LPO, of course. So My Fair Lady runs just this week through June the 24th at Dixon Hall. If you have a chance to get some tickets, do so. I would urge you to do so quickly, though. Now, over at Le Petit Theater, it's the second weekend for Crowns. This is a gospel music. It's written by Regina Taylor, and it's directed by Tommy Myrick. I always want to say Tommy, but it's Tommy Myrick. This is a new production that stars some amazing young and some other more established professional singers telling their stories of finding solace and praising God at church services. Of course, the crowns are the elaborate hats that these ladies wear, they don for their worship services. Great older performers like Barbara Shorts and Barbara Hunter hold court along with newcomers Jarrell Hamilton, Joanna Hale McGill, and Danielle Edinburgh Wilson, all of them with great voices and beautiful, colorful costumes by Helen Ruiz. Adrian Lindsay and Trey Lopez represent the minister and the brother of Yolanda, played by Jasmine Johnson, who's the central character. She's sent away to Louisiana in this interpretation from the mean streets up north that eventually claim her brother's life. Crown features many gospel and spiritual favorites like This Little Light of Mine, Just a Closer Walk with Thee, His Eye is on the Sparrow, and the Saints when they go marching in, of course. It has been localized, and that adds to the enjoyment of this provocative work. Crowns runs through July the 1st at Le Petit Theater on St. Peter Street. And again, opening this weekend, I want to let everybody know about Talkback. This is the NOLA Project's final production, the entry for this, their 13th season. For those of us who have attended plays, the convention of using a talkback to engage the audience and allow the cast members to speak directly to them has been utilized with great frequency in the last several years. Well, Talkback will employ different locations. This is what's going to happen, though, when actors actually tell the absolute truth about what goes on in a production. And you'll have a lot of fun with this, a lot of comedy involved. This is going to be on this week at the CAC and continues next week at the Lion Theater at Lusher, uptown, and then we'll end at the George and Joyce Ween Heritage Jazz and Heritage Festival, Jazz and Heritage Center on Rampart Street, which is the old funeral home, if you remember where that was. And that's, again, all directed by Bo Bratcher. It should be a real fun outing, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to see that.
Alan, I continue to marvel at the Tulane Summer Lyric mounting major, full-blown productions. We're not talking concert version here. Three of them in the summer.
And when they have Ragtime coming up, which is the next production, one of the performers who's doing Colehouse Walker Jr. is actually coming from Hamilton. So, you know, this is not just and the new lady who did My Fair Lady last night, as I mentioned, she's a newcomer, but she just surprised everybody at how wonderful she was in the role. And also Newsies, Diane Lala is going to be choreographing and doing the choreography and the directing for Newsies. The first time this has hit the stage in any region will be right here because Michael McKelvey has some connections up in New York, and he made sure they had the first opportunity to do this. If you saw it at the Sanger, they're going to do a great job at Tulane Summer Lyric as well.
Well, you know, I think also that people don't necessarily realize that Tulane has a musical theater degree. You can get a degree in that.
Yes, and of course Diane Lala teaches at one of the great centers in Cincinnati for teaching people to be Broadway actors and performers. You know, she's at the University of Cincinnati there, and they do a great job. They're like one of the top 3 or 4 schools considered, along with Carnegie Mellon and Juilliard.
Last year we were on a cruise, and it was one of those wonderful cruises where they would have practically like a Broadway show every night or some kind of musical review. And 2 of the young performers were Tulane alums.
I love it.
And Leslie Castet had been their teacher.
Yo.
I know.
Go figure.
There you go. Go figure. Thank you. And now it's time for our picks of the week. Richard, name some of your earlier books for us.
Bienville's Dilemma, Geographies of New Orleans, Time and Place in New Orleans, Lincoln in New Orleans, Del Hall Photojournalism, New Orleans Then and Now, and I'm probably missing a couple.
Plenty of good summer reading. All right, great. Thank you. Poppy.
Well, let's see. I'm all about staycations, vacations. We've been to Baton Rouge for an exhibit. We've been to Milan at Piccolo Gelateria. Go to the Caribbean at the New Orleans Caribbean Festival, which is taking place tomorrow and Sunday, 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Central City Barbecue on South Rampart.
All right.
Caribbean-style food and music. It's
Sounds
going to
good
be
to
fun.
me. Jonathan, what you got coming up?
Yes, just again, Cinema Twain. And one thing I forgot to mention, which most people might be interested in, you have an opportunity to meet and greet with Val after the show.
Yeah.
We have those certain tickets available, so come on down and meet Val and enjoy the show.
All right, Alan.
Alan Menken and Hal Ashford did Beauty and the Beast, of course, probably the first incursion that they had at Disney that gave them so much success. They're going to be doing this over at Rivertown Theater's Performing Arts in July, but I want to give everybody a heads up because, you know, now's the time to get your tickets. They're doing the Beauty and the Beast Junior, as I understand it, first, and then they're going to have the senior production, if you will. But tickets start at $39 and some change, all the way up to $44, but still very, very worth it. This should be their best show for the summer that you'll you'll see. Okay.
You know, I wanted to tell you, I remember fondly Buzz Podwell starting, and now Jessica, his daughter,
Yes.
has Patchwork Players, which for a long time was at Tulane, but now it's continued on at Rivertown, hasn't
And of course,
it?
Gary Rucker was involved with Buzzy over at Tulane when it was there, so it was natural for him to want to bring it over to his own theater.
Yeah, so this is a perfect time, though, in terms of summertime theater for children as well.
If you don't have the kids involved in a summer camp, get them involved in theater. It's great for them.
That sounds familiar. A while back. Thank you. And for my picks, voodoo priestess Sally Ann Glassman and the group La Source Ancien Fou will be celebrating St. John's Eve with their annual head washing ceremony, which is dedicated to Marie Laveau. That will be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on the banks of Bayou St. John, just past the Magnolia Footbridge, right by Cabrini, towards Orleans Avenue. Next Wednesday at 6 p.m., the Historic New Orleans Collection is presenting a panel called Reclaiming the Fire, which commemorates the 45th anniversary of the deadly fire of the Upstairs Lounge on Charter Street. There will be a discussion from numerous historians and witnesses, as well as a book signing. That will be at the Williams Research Center on Charter Street, free of charge. And there will be another Chris Champagne show next Friday night at Cello's on North Holland Street in Metairie. Thank you all so very much for being with us. So much fun and eclectic. Thank you for watching. Good night.